Welcome to Western relations. Over the last 3 weeks, Europe's skies have turned into a stage for something bigger than routine military drills. Russian drones have crossed into Poland, fighter jets slipped into Estonian airspace, and in Denmark, airports were forced to ground flights because of unidentified drones overhead. These aren't isolated accidents. They're deliberate probes, each one designed to test NATO's nerves. Russia's playbook is simple. Push just far enough to create alarm, but not far enough to trigger a war. Cross NATO airspace for a few minutes, then turn back. Send drones over an airport, but never admit responsibility. Force the alliance to debate its own response. And by the time NATO finishes debating, the provocation is already over. Let's lay out the timeline. On September 9th and 10th, Polish officials reported at least 19 Russian drones crossing into their airspace. Warsaw immediately called for Article 4 consultations, a rare step that signals serious concern about territorial security. Only days later, Estonia revealed that 3 Russian MiG-31 fighters had entered its skies for 12 minutes. That's not a navigational error. That's a deliberate signal. NATO jets scrambled to shadow them. But again, the Russians left before things escalated. Then came Denmark. On September 23rd, drones near Copenhagen Airport forced the suspension of flights. Thousands of passengers stranded. 2 days later, more drones appeared over Billund and Aalborg, disrupting civilian travel again. And it wasn't just civilian targets. Denmark confirmed that Skridstrup Air Base, home to its fleet of F-35 fighters, had also been overflown. Danish officials called it the most serious attack on civilian infrastructure of its kind. By the time NATO defense chiefs gathered in Riga on September 26th, the pattern was obvious. Europe was being tested, so why does Russia take these risks? First, this is about intelligence gathering. Every probe helps Moscow measure NATO's reaction times. How quickly do jets scramble? How close do they shadow? Do they fire warning flares? Do they jam drones, or just watch? Each reaction gives Russia valuable data. Second, it's about politics inside NATO. Moscow knows the alliance is united on paper, but divided in practice. Poland and the Baltic states are clear. Any violation should be answered firmly, even with force. Germany, Italy, and others worry about escalation. By forcing NATO to debate itself, Moscow achieves its goal without firing a shot. Third, it's about normalizing the abnormal. If airspace violations and drone sightings become routine, people stop paying attention. What once sparked outrage becomes background noise. That erosion of deterrence is a win for the Kremlin. And finally, it's about distraction. These incidents coincided with some of the heaviest bombardments in Ukraine in months. By keeping NATO busy in the Baltics and Scandinavia, Russia stretches Allied attention just when Ukraine needs it most. Inside NATO, this creates a serious problem. In Warsaw, the view is simple. Hesitation is weakness. If Russian drones enter Polish skies again, they will be shot down. Warsaw has the military resources and the political will to act alone if necessary. In Tallinn and Vilnius, the mood is similar. The Baltics argue that NATO must move from air policing, intercepting and escorting, to actual air defense, with clear rules of engagement. But Berlin and Rome see things differently. Germany especially fears escalation. The nightmare scenario is a Russian jet shot down over NATO territory, sparking a crisis that could spiral. For them, restraint is the safer course. These are not minor disagreements. They cut to the core of NATO's credibility. If frontline allies act independently, unity frays. If cautious allies hold back, deterrence collapses. Putin doesn't need to break NATO. He only needs to watch it tie itself in knots. We've been here before. In November 2015, a Turkish F-16 shot down a Russian Su-24 that violated Turkish airspace near Syria. For a few tense weeks, Ankara and Moscow were at odds. But when something changed. Russia stopped violating Turkish airspace. The lesson is not that NATO should rush into confrontation. It's that credible consequences can deter further violations. A bully doesn't stop because you ask nicely. He stops when the cost of testing you becomes too high. That is the lesson today's Europe seems reluctant to absorb. But this isn't just about jets and drones. It's part of a wider hybrid campaign. Cyber attacks have paralyzed airports in Berlin, Brussels, and London. Disinformation campaigns flood social media, seeking to undermine support for Ukraine and deepen divisions inside Europe. The sabotage of undersea cables in the Baltic Sea showed just how vulnerable Europe's infrastructure really is. When drones force the closure of Copenhagen Airport, that's not just inconvenience for travelers. It's a test of Europe's resilience, its ability to coordinate civil and military responses. And right now, Europe is failing those tests too often. Then there's Washington. President Donald Trump has been blunt. Europe should not rely exclusively on the United States. He has demanded higher spending and sent mixed signals about America's automatic commitment to NATO. For Russia, this ambiguity is a gift. Each probe is not just a test of NATO's radar. It's a test of NATO's confidence without a reliable American backstop. The less certain Europe feels about US support, the more effective each Russian drone becomes. So what now? At Riga, Baltic leaders pushed for NATO to move from air policing to real air defense. That means layered systems, ground-based missiles, persistent radar, and rules of engagement that allow for neutralizing drones before they cause disruption. It also means clarity. Citizens need to know. If a drone crosses into NATO airspace, what happens next? If a Russian jet lingers too long, what is the consequence? Vagueness breeds uncertainty, and uncertainty emboldens Moscow. Europe must also harden its airports and bases with counter-drone systems, integrate civil and military responses, and set up a joint NATO-EU cell to attribute attacks quickly. Ambiguity is Russia's weapon. Transparency is NATO's answer. And finally, Europe must agree on one message, spoken in one voice. Violations will be intercepted and, if necessary, neutralized. Not Poland's message, not Germany's message, NATO's message. Russia has found a way to pressure NATO without firing a shot. Each drone, each incursion is a probe of Europe's will. The strategy works only if the alliance hesitates. The moment NATO sets clear, proportionate rules, the testing becomes costly and unattractive. The 2015 Turkish case proved it. The question is whether Europe is ready to relearn that lesson. NATO's credibility will not be judged by speeches in Riga or Brussels. It will be judged by what happens the next time an unidentified aircraft crosses the border. If hesitation remains the answer, the probes will continue, and with each one, the risks for Europe will grow. Thank you for watching Western Relations. If you found this analysis useful, Give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and visit westernrelations.com for more in-depth coverage of Europe, America, and the shifting balance of global power.